So hello everyone, thank you so much and welcome to Vancouver Heritage Foundation Places That Matter presentation number 77. Well, we're here today to commemorate Major Matthews' contribution to the documentation of Vancouver's history. My name is Karen Estrin. I'm the Special Project Coordinator with the Vancouver Heritage Foundation. So just a bit about the project. Places That Matter began in 2011 to celebrate Vancouver's 125th anniversary of incorporation as a city. And the goal of the project is to raise awareness about the people, places, and events that tell the story of Vancouver. We invited the public to nominate and vote online, and an independent site selection committee selected the final 125 sites that received plaques. We collaborate with community groups, historians, and plaque sponsors on each site to help us write the plaque text and to plan the presentations. We'll be posting photos today that are being taken by our volunteer, Rick Horn. We'll be sharing those on Facebook, and we'll also be putting up posts on Twitter. If any of you are using Twitter and would like to live tweet or share anything, please use the hashtag #PlacesThatMatter. If you're interested in learning more, please visit our website, vancouverheritagefoundation.org, to join us at another presentation or event. So to get us started, I'd like to invite Heather Gordon, City Archivist, to start us off.
Thank you, Karen. I've been asked to speak about Major Matthews this afternoon, his house, and why it is a place that matters. First of all, the Major. For those of you who don't know, I'll give you anything about him. I'll give you a little bit of background, but I have to say before I begin, I'm thrilled today that Daphne Slay was able to join us for the presentation this afternoon. Daphne, of course, is the author of the reason why the man has a plaque on his house. I should really be up here telling you about Matthews and not me, but I will be brief. James Skip Matthews was born in North Wales in 1878 and arrived in Vancouver in 1898, having made his way here via New Zealand, San Francisco, Washington State, and Victoria. Over the course of his working life, he held a variety of positions, including 20 years with Imperial Oil. He joined a local militia unit in 1903, and during the First World War was transferred to regular forces. He served in Europe from February 1916 to May 1918, and eventually attained the rank of Major, the title he'd use, as we know, for the rest of his life. After the war, he operated his own scow-and-tow business, but in the mid-1920s turned to community service and civic affairs, and increasingly to collecting and documenting Vancouver's history. In 1933, City Council appointed him City Archivist on June 12th, today, the position he held until his death in 1970 at the age of 92. Matthews built his home in the 1300 block of Maple Street in 1911, a time of economic boom in Vancouver and new development in Kitsilano. It was the home in which he raised his family, and the home which housed, in probably every nook and cranny, as Daphne mentions in her book, his ever-growing collection of records and artifacts, the foundation of what would become the Vancouver Archives. That collection would move with him from city site to city site after 1931, and sometimes, in moments when he disagreed with City Council and feared the collection was at risk, from city site back to his own home, then on Arbutus Street. The house on Maple is certainly symbolic of the man, and the man built, I think, one of Vancouver's most important legacies. He was not an archivist in the modern-day sense of the profession, but his role as historian, collector, chronicler, and antiquarian built the core of the City Archives' private sector holdings, and his skill as a narrator, publicist, and fiery advocate for all manner of record or monument convinced the city government that investment in his archives was absolutely necessary. His legacy is not only the building we're in today, named after him, and his collections held here and in other cultural facilities like the Museum of Vancouver and the Maritime Museum, but also the work of more than 4 decades of archivists after him, who built on those collections and have made the City of Vancouver Archives the respected and innovative institution it is today. So, on behalf of the Vancouver Archives, I'd like to thank the Vancouver Heritage Foundation for honoring Major Matthews with the Places That Matters plaque. Given his penchant for monuments, I think you'd be very pleased with this one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. Now I'd like to invite civic historian John Ackley to say a few words.
This is actually quite fun because I first met Major Matthews when I started doing some research and came into the card catalog to look for photographs. And when looking through the Matthews collection of the card catalog, it was very hard to find things. Nothing was logical. Nothing made sense. The cataloging was weird, and it was just the most twisted thing I'd ever encountered. And what really frightened me and then kind of thrilled me was after a couple of years of working in there, I actually began to think like him. And it was one of those weird things where you could come into the card catalog and you needed a photograph of a certain street, and you would think oak tree, church, not the street name, because somehow you knew that he probably filed the photograph you were looking for into this weird catalog. And it was kind of interesting. You begin to think like him, and then you realize that there's a perverse logic to what he was doing. The sad thing is, now I do everything online, and you don't have that twisted logic to work with, so I don't think like him anymore. But it was fun just to sort of get into the mind of someone like that and to see how things were cataloged. And then I discovered in a bookstore, volume 3 of his early Vancouver oral history stuff, and having worked with him in the catalog, this complete 7-volume unorganized collection of oral histories that overlapped and contradicted each other actually made sense. And that was the scariest part for me, was you could actually read this thing, and then you know that one story there, and you just kind of move 60 pages that way, and you could pick up the thread of the narrative. And so he was a very strange man in terms of being sort of the bull in the china shop, always pushing, always sort of badgering people. And reading some of his correspondence is fantastic, because he'd write a letter to somebody and say, I need to know about this, and no response. So he would write another letter, and it would get a little sterner and sterner. And then finally someone would send a letter back saying, sorry about the correspondence, etc., and start talking. But the best thing was that he was one of the very few people in the early days, in the early 30s, who actually went out and talked to First Nations folks and actually collected names and things. He unfortunately ignored sort of the Musqueam a little bit more than he should have, because they were further away. But he collected names, he collected place names, he collected stories. And much of what we know about early pre-settlement Vancouver actually comes from his work as well. And he falls in that category of archivists like Ainsley Hamilton and Victoria and others around the province and elsewhere, who were really thorns in the side of everybody, but collected because they felt it was important. And only later did city councils catch up and kind of go, oh yeah, we should probably do something about an archives. And so it's a delight that he finally gets a Places That Matters plaque, because what I do, what Michael does, what others do, really depends on the fact that he was that guy that collected all this stuff and kept it in one spot. So it's thrilling to see the plaque.
Thank you, John. Now I'd like to invite Michael Fairbaugh, our board chair, to come up to the podium.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here and award this plaque on behalf of the Vancouver Heritage Foundation. I think most of you in the room know who we are, but in case there's anybody who doesn't, we're a nonprofit organization supporting the conservation of heritage buildings and structures in recognition of their contribution to the city's economy, sustainability, and culture. The Places That Matters program has been a real interesting process for us, and each one of these plaques brings out a specific group of people with a specific interest to celebrate one of the 125 places in the city. I'd like to thank the City of Vancouver Archives for sponsoring the plaque, in particular the current City Archivist Heather Gordon and former City Archivist Les Mobbs. By sponsoring the plaque, they're supporting a wide range of work that goes on for the Places That Matter project, including the research, writing, and plaque production that goes into the plaque that we're presenting today. So here is the plaque, and I'm going to ask Heather to come up and read it to you.
So the plaque says, Major Matthews House.
You need to change that. I'm tweeting on your behalf.
I feel like
Excellent.
the plaque says, Major J.S. Matthews, adventurer, innovator, and first city archivist, arrived in Vancouver in 1898. In 1911, he built his family home on Maple Street, just north of Cornwall. Major Matthews was a natural-born collector, acquiring pieces of history his whole life. His home was filled with the documents that would become Vancouver's first archival holdings. The City of Vancouver officially named him City Archivist in 1933, a role he held until his death in 1970. The city's municipal archives building at Kitsilano Point was a lifelong dream of Major Matthews. The City Archives' continued growth honors his decades of service.
Yes, so
so much. So again, thank you to Heather Gordon for sponsoring and also for helping coordinate this event. And also thank you so much to John for all the work you do for us for all of these events. Just so you know, this plaque is going to be installed near Major Matthew's house on Maple Street. The intention is for it to go on Maple at Cornwall so that more people will be able to see it and be able to think about the neighborhood and who was here and the history as they are going around in the city. So as we conclude, I'd like to invite everyone to join us at the front so we can take a group photo. And again, thank you.